Well, as my favorite college football podcast hosts like to say, win your clunkers. Penn State ekes out a 17-7 win over Northwestern and just an ugly game played under the remnants of Hurricane Ian. Once again, Tim Hayden, Marty Leap from BlackShoeDiaries.com. Marty, we were talking before at the end of the game. I said I was glad I scheduled this broadcast for a little bit later, past 7, because we both needed a little time to decompress. And here I am drinking a Namaste White from Dogfish Head Brewery, if that gives you any idea. And no, they don't pay us to hawk this product.
No, I got Pumpkinhead by Shipyard, so I'm right there with you. Again, they are not paying us, but this is just a
not paying us for the show. Nope. We just enjoy their beer.
Right.
Marty, just I guess quick thoughts before we really get into the nitty gritty.
I think a big takeaway for me coming out of this, and you and I talked about this in our Black Shoe Diaries group chat during the game. This thing had some hardcore Illinois 2021 vibes to it. And to their credit, they didn't lose. As weird as that may sound, and I feel like most people listening are probably going to agree with this. This is a game last year Penn State loses, without a doubt.
Penn State won, Rob.
Yeah, yeah, Roger, they were able to win it 17-7. But yeah, without a doubt, this is a game last year Penn State, they screw around to find a way to lose, and they didn't. So credit to them for that. My other big takeaway is whenever the first time running backs have a positional meeting this week, I fully expect James Franklin to be in that room, and I would not want to be in that room because it is going to be ugly. For as much good as the running backs have shown this year. Today, they struggled with holding on to the football. I mean, 4 fumbles, that just isn't going to cut it. And I will say too, thank God they played Northwestern today. The way Penn State played, if this was any team on their schedule other than Northwestern, Central Michigan, or Ohio, they probably don't win this game. So, I mean, just thank God this was Northwestern. I mean, yeah, the weather was a factor without a doubt, but it just, yeah, it was ugly. They won. That's all that matters. They would have lost this game last year. You've got a whole 2 weeks to go to the big house to get things cleaned up.
Absolutely. And I was just speaking of ugliness. We had 8 total turnovers in this game, 5 from Penn State, 3 from Northwestern. So Penn State, they lost 4 fumbles. Sean Clifford threw an interception as well. And with Northwestern, they lost a couple fumbles, and then I believe Helinski threw a pick to Jair Brown. And we were talking about before we hit record, Marty, the key difference, I figured what the game comes down to is despite those 5 turnovers, Northwestern did not capitalize once, 0 points. Meanwhile, Penn State, 14 points off those 3 turnovers. And I'm not even counting like other plays where Northwestern shot itself in the foot with a fumble that pushed them back into a second or third and forever type situation. It was just, it's one of those games that you saw Penn State, it seemed like they got up 14 zip. That's a score at halftime. You know, Nick Singleton had a nice, like, powerful run to burst through and put them up by 2 touchdowns. And although you would have liked to see that up 21 zip or 28 zip going into half, at least you could tolerate that, thinking, all right, well, I think they should tack on at least another touchdown, or maybe 2, or at least maybe a touchdown, a field goal. Because you're thinking a game in that type of environment, and with a Northwestern team that just hasn't been most prolific on offense this year, like 24 points should have been more than enough to win without, sweating it out like we all did watching that second half. But the other problem being the running backs. I mean, they just, no one could hang on to the rock. Singleton fumbled it away twice. Kevon League and Katron Allen also got in on the fumbling away party. They lost a fumble each. Just as good as they were at times, especially Singleton and Allen, who they both rushed for nearly 100 yards each. And it's I guess at best it's a mixed review. Maybe it has to do with the fact that Penn State hung on 1, but And what's your take on the at least on the running back situation and maybe just the offense as a whole? Do you think the play calling was ideal for those conditions? Like just focus on trying to pound the rock, only throw it when you really need to. When you do, just do some easy makeable throws like out of play action or just short little slant routes. Maybe take the occasional deep shot.
I mean, I'll start with the running backs. It was a weird game for the running backs, I want to say, because I mean, you Devin Ford didn't dress today. No, we don't know why yet. At least I have not seen anything about a post game yet as to
It
why Devin
sounds
Ford
like
wasn't dressed.
it sounds like he might be leaving the program, like he's
Um,
preserving his.
See, I would be curious on that front though too, just because
That's a
and
rumor.
I could be
That's just a
I could
rumor.
be wrong on this, and if I am, I apologize. But if I remember correctly, his freshman year, he left the program for like 2 or 3 weeks because of like a family medical issue or something like that down in Virginia, which, is it a possibility he left for something like that? Someone took leaving the program the wrong way. You know what I mean? But I digress. To get back to the running backs today, it was weird because Kevon Lee, Katron Allen, and Nick Singleton all averaged more than 4 yards per carry. They combined to rush for over 200 yards. And yet you come out of this game feeling underwhelmed by the running backs because of the fumbles. Singleton lost 2, Lee lost 1, Allen lost 1. It was a just weird day for the running backs because without the performance of the running backs, Penn State doesn't win this game. But at the same time, it was the performance of the running backs that contributed greatly to putting this game in jeopardy. As for the play calling today, I really didn't think it was that poor. I mean, there was a lot of times Yursich was able to scheme open receivers and throws weren't made. Now there was a third down pass. I think it was in the second or third quarter that Sean Clifford, it wasn't a great throw. Trey Wallace had to go up and try and get it, but did hit him in the hands. But I didn't like the play call there because you're throwing across the field to the back hash in those conditions. Just you
Not
don't
an
want to.
ideal throw to be making in those conditions.
Yeah, and I mean, it wasn't a great throw, but it still should have been caught. But in better conditions, that's probably a throw that is caught for the first down. I mean, for the most part, I really didn't have an issue with Mike Yursich in the game he called. I thought he called a good game. But it's just there was a lot of execution issues on Penn State's front. The interception Clifford threw was just abysmal. I don't know what he was doing. And almost threw another one that might have been a pick six that thankfully Northwestern dropped in the second quarter. The fumbles by the running backs, like obviously the lanes were there. Penn State ran for I think 230 yards, something like that. Like I said, I know Lee Singleton.
They had 220 yards net rushing. So
Yeah, so I mean that obviously includes sacks, that includes those kneel downs at the end. So on actual running plays, they were over 230. Lee had 40 yards, 41, something like that on like 8 or 9 carries. Singleton and Allen both were up around 90 yards rushing. So the running backs, if you just look at the stat line and don't see the turnovers, it looks like the running backs played a good game. And like I said, overall, the running backs were fine, but just those turnovers, man, they're killers, and you can't have that moving forward. And like I said earlier, just thank God this game was against Northwestern, because if this game was against anyone they have left other than maybe like Rutgers or Indiana, we're probably talking a much different tune right now.
Right. And yes, Larry, Penn State did on line of scrimmage, 220 yards of rushing. Well, yeah, exactly. It's not close at all if Penn State hangs on to the football. That's the reason we're sweating it out when we otherwise shouldn't have been. You hang on to those. Maybe you'll at least maybe kick, get some 3 points or even finish some of those drives in the end zone. It's a whole different ball game. I really felt like if they just gotten one more touchdown, that would have effectively iced it. Like there was no way Northwestern was scoring 3 touchdowns with the way they were playing and the way Manny Diaz's defense played the whole day. And I guess it's a nice segue maybe into the defense. And my goodness, why don't we just double or triple Manny Diaz's paycheck at this point? Because I mean that may have been their finest performance, because the offense keeps coughing the ball up back to Northwestern and continually giving them chance after chance to try to give them the game. I mean, it like you were saying before, this felt like Illinois 2.0 for a good while, but unlike last year, the defense did actually hold on So that's I think what stuck out to me the most was just the numerous times on fourth down. I mean, I lost count of like fourth down conversions they had. Actually, I could look at the stats right now. Yeah, they were 1 for 4, but every time they went, pretty much every time they went for it, especially key moments, they were denied. And of course, what stuck out to you and I probably is the goal line stand, which kind of reminiscent of that goal line stand a few years ago against Michigan when they hung on in what was looking like a blowout. This is like maybe a more uglier version of that. But just just your thoughts on the defense today?
Yeah, man, you can't sing the praise of this defense enough. It's been that way most of the season, but especially today, because they don't win this game if the defense doesn't do what they did. It's just they are flying all over the field, getting to the quarterback. The defensive line, I thought, may have had their best game of the season thus far. And you might rebuttal this, and I understand people rebuttal this. Say, yeah, it's Northwestern. But Northwestern's got a first-round pick on their offensive line. That offensive line's not terrible. It's not
Peter
great.
Skoronsky.
Yeah, Peter Skoronsky's going to be a first-round pick in April. That offensive line's got some talent there, and and it was the whole defensive line. Hakeem Beamon looked great. PJ Mustapher's making plays. Isaac, Nick Tarbird may have had the best game of his career. Chop Robinson continues to look like a potential All-American. Denied Dennis Sutton flashed again. There was plays with Zane Durant in the backfield. So, like, this defensive line played phenomenal. And the secondary continues to do their thing. Big interception by Tig Brown. Multiple pass breakups once again. It's just, yeah, this defense, man, they're good. Manny Diaz is good. Whatever he's making, like you said, double or triple it, he's going to eventually become a head coach again. He's too good of a football coach not to. I mean, honestly, I thought he got a raw deal at Miami getting fired. I'm certainly not going to complain about it because it worked out tremendously for Penn State. Because it was going to be very difficult to lose Brent Pry and not take a big step backward at defense coordinator. And Penn State most certainly is not taking a step backward at defense coordinator. Yeah, it was a tremendous game by Diaz. It was a tremendous game by his players. This defense, as much as the offense can sputter at times, and as we saw today, and Dan Orlovsky was talking about this at the end of the game and nailed it. They are physical enough in the trenches to beat Michigan and have the secondary capable of beating Ohio State. Now, this is not to say they're going to beat those teams, but with this defense, they're going to have a legitimate chance to beat everybody they have left on their schedule. And that's really all you can ask. So, yeah, this defense deserves all kinds of praise for not just today, but the entire season. It's a really good group, and they deserve to be recognized as one of the best in the country because they have played that way so far.
No doubt. And just a quick reminder, blackshadaris.com. You can find us there. We've already got some post-game material up there for you right now. Ellie Meredith, who you've seen on this show before as a host, he's got his five takeaways. Patrick Kerbor, a guy who I think has been on here maybe once or twice, also as his recap. You'll have, Marty, you're going to have your Twitter reaction later tonight. And then tomorrow I'll have my position grades post per usual. And that'll kind of be a bit of a issue to figure out with certain positions, given what a mixed bag it was at times.
It definitely won't be your A's across the board like it was against Auburn.
No, definitely not going to be a straight A report. I can guarantee that much. But keep an eye out for that tomorrow. And also just a friendly reminder, tonight, 11:30 p.m. Eastern time on the main Voice of College Football channel, Mark Rogers himself, the Voice of College Football, will be doing his usual live post-game call-in show. So maybe we'll get a drunk Marty or maybe even a drunken me lamenting about the fumbles or just how great Manny Diaz's defense is.
Yeah, I will say that if you've never checked out Mark's show on Saturday nights, check it out. It's great stuff. I watch it pretty much every Saturday if I'm still awake at that point. Have been known to call in a time or two, so you never know what cameo appearances you may get. But yeah, it's great stuff by Mark. He's one of the best out there, especially having the interactive with being able to call in like that. You don't get a lot of live reaction shows like that in sports, period, but especially in college football. So yeah, I highly recommend it to anybody out there.
Just going back to the offense for a bit, Marty. I know in the Slack channel with Mike Stars, you especially were pretty vocal about wanting Drew Howard to get in the ball game, see what he could do at least with slinging the rock. Obviously, he did not see any action today. Do you think this is a missed opportunity by the coaching staff to not give him a series, or do you think just with the game plan they had in mind, just stick to the ground game, only throw when you really need to? Like it was maybe okay that he didn't end up playing today.
Yeah, I mean, like you said, I was really wanted to see Drew. A lot of it just stemmed from the offense was struggling. They couldn't get anything go with the passing game. Just wanted to see if he could spark them. I can understand not going to him because of the elements. And especially against an inferior opponent that, as we saw today, you could play probably about the worst possible football game you could and still beat. My hope would be, though, if this happens again in Ann Arbor in 2 weeks, and if the offense is out there him hawing around, and that happens in Michigan, odds are you're probably down by 10 or 13 points, not holding on to the 10 or 13 point lead. I would just like to think that they would make the change and they would give Drew, even if it's just a series, see if you can spark things. That's what I think frustrates me most is it's very evident what Sean Clifford is at this point. He's a high floor but pretty low ceiling kind of quarterback. Drew is got as high of a ceiling, honestly, as probably any quarterback in the country. Like, if the offense is struggling, see what he can do. I get, as much as I would like to see Drew Allar be the starting quarterback, I know that's not going to happen. Now, if this team loses a game or two, kind of falls out of things, Sean Clifford starts getting banged up, maybe that changes. But I just would like to see James Franklin moving forward. If your offense is struggling, especially with this big stretch coming up, I mean, the stretch doesn't look nearly as daunting after Minnesota came out today and just peed down their leg against Purdue. But I would just hope that if you, any point in that stretch, you need to get the offense going, be willing to give it a chance. Just see if he can spark something. He can make throws Sean Clifford can't. And that was part of it for me today, too. And a lot of people were going to say, well, the elements, this, can't throw in that, et cetera, et cetera. I understand that. But if you have a quarterback with the talent of Drew Allar, he's going to be more likely to make a throw in these conditions. It wouldn't have hurt to give him an opportunity. I mean, and even with the conditions, there were plays there to be made. Clifford missed. There was in the fourth quarter on back-to-back drives. There was a third down. He had Parker Washington just wide open, had all day to throw it, and just out and out missed them. Following drive, I think it was like the first, second play of the drive, Mitchell Tinsley had his guy beat for what would have been probably like an 80-yard touchdown. And again, Sean just missed them. Those are throws that, if you make those throws, you're probably feeling a lot better at the end of this game. So yeah, I just hope moving forward, when the conditions are better, they wouldn't be afraid to give Drew Allar a series or two if the offense is struggling, especially the passing attack. Because we really haven't seen the running game struggle all year outside of the Purdue game. The last 4 games, running game's been great. But if we see the passing attack being the struggle, which the passing games have been complete opposite. The running game has gotten progressively better. The passing game has gotten progressively worse as the season's gone on. I would like to think that we see that they would be willing to give Allar an opportunity to try and spark things there.
Yeah. My other thought with the pass game is, boy, would it have been nice to have a Jahan Dotson or KJ Hamler, a guy who's capable of just being that reliable deep threat who can take the top off of defense. I'd like to think if they were able to play today, they could have come up with a big grab, either goes for a touchdown or sets up a touchdown. So I mean, yeah, Mitchell Tinsley at times is able to sort of be that guy, but they don't have anyone who's constantly getting behind the defense like Dotson and Hamler were able to do. And
one thing I will add to that real quick, Tim, sorry to cut you off while we're on that. Yeah. I don't want to mention, I do think their best bet at that right now. I mean, on the roster, it's probably Caden Saunders, but he's a true freshman. He'll get there. I think right now your best bet at that's Keandre Lambert-Smith. He has shown that ability. And it was literally like the second or third offensive snap of the game. He left. Yeah, and never came back in. So I think that may have been a factor there too, because Keandre Lambert-Smith has that big playability. He needs to find consistency, but we've seen that big playability at times. It really, against Purdue, he had the big playability, help bail them out, help them win that game. So hopefully KLS will be okay. He's got 2 weeks to get rested up. Hopefully he'll be good to go for Michigan. But yeah, I do think, because I agree, really the one thing this offense has been missing all year is those explosive plays in the passing game. I think Keandre Lambert-Smith can give you that, but you got to get him healthy. So hopefully he'll be able to be healthy when they go to Ann Arbor here in a couple of weeks.
Yeah, let's hope so. And, I'd be remiss if we did not also give a shout out to the special teams. Barney Moore, just, you could say he's like one of them, probably the MVP again today. I mean, he was consistently pinning Northwestern inside their own red zone, making them have to march 80 plus yards to reach the end zone, which, they were only able to reach the end zone just once today. And of course, it came pretty darn close to doing another time, but, the goal line stand happened. And Jake Pinniger, to his credit, in bad conditions, nails a clutch field goal to make it a 10-point game and at least give Penn State a little bit of breathing room, especially once, there was less than 5 minutes to go and Northwestern's still down 2 scores. It's a different vibe than if it's still 14-7. And all it takes is just one big play. It could be, Cliff throws a dumb pick 6, or, they fumble deep in their own territory. Northwestern gets one big play for a touchdown kind of deal. I mean, you're just one big play away from that game being tied up. It's still 14-7. So props to Pinniger. To Jake, he made a huge kick right there. It's kind of funny because I think you and I were saying this last week about Jake, because he had a rough game against Central Michigan last week, that he maybe does best in pressure situations because he makes a field goal in a close game in these horrible conditions. And then a couple weeks ago at Auburn, it's 48-yarder. They're up 21-6, and he nails that to put Penn State up much more comfortably by 3 touchdowns. And so I guess maybe you are onto something with that statement. You just got to get more pressure situations for Jake, and he'll just make them every time, just about. Marty, your quick thoughts about special teams?
Yeah, I agree. Barney Moore continues to be just an absolute godsend for this team this year. And with Jake Pinniger, yeah, I guess that's the secret for Jake Pinniger. You got to get him out there in pressure situations. It's whenever it's a game that's out of control or facing an opponent you're dispatching of easily that Pinniger struggles. Also, real quick update. I know we talked about earlier. Scrolling through Twitter here, I guess James Franklin confirmed after the game that Devin Ford is indeed no longer with the football program. So okay, just a quick update on that.
So rumors are true. Oh, best of luck to
yeah,
Devin.
Absolutely.
Certainly, I was a little surprised. I guess to be frank, I was a little surprised that he was still with the program going into the season. I figured he was probably my prime first person I would have thought would hit the portal in the offseason, but it was Keziah Holmes who did so. But now, of course, Penn State down to 3 scholarship backs at the moment. You got London Montgomery coming in next year, and I would imagine J1 Sider is going to be looking for – they already were, but now they're going to ratchet up the search even harder for a second running back in the 2023 class.
Yeah, like you said, best of luck to Devin Ford moving forward. I mean, obviously a player whose career did not go as a lot of people would hope to Penn State. I mean, I know coming out of high school, some recruiting services had him as a 5-star recruit. But at the same time, he's a guy that James Franklin has sung the praise about, his ability to be a team player, do what's asked of him. I know James has said on more than one occasion that he would gladly welcome Devin Ford onto his coaching staff any day if he ever wanted it. So still a kid that's got a very bright future ahead of him. So definitely best of luck to him. And, being a Stafford, Virginia native, coming out of high school, Penn State beat out Virginia Tech for him. I wouldn't probably be a stunner if he does enter the portal to maybe see him reunite with either Brent Pry, Virginia Tech, or potentially even Ricky Ronnie down there at Old Dominion. So I'm sure he'll have a good landing spot.
I would be shocked if it's not one of those 2 schools you just mentioned, Marty, just given the Penn State connections down there.
Yeah, and the thing is too with him, it's not like he's a talented kid. Look at some of the other running backs he's been around. Journey Brown, Noah Kane before injuries kind of derailed his career. Singleton and Katron Allen this year. So yeah, it's not like Devin Ford lacks talent. He's just constantly been in one loaded running back room after another. And hey, that's just the way the cookie crumbles sometimes.
Yeah, like I said, that's just how sometimes it doesn't pan out the way you hoped it would. But best of luck to Devin. He was always a good representative of Penn State. Did contribute definitely on the field at times. So wish them all best of luck. Just looking ahead, so Penn State's got the bye week coming up this week, and then of course the beginning of the mid-October gauntlet begins the following week when they take on Michigan at the Big House. So it'll be a big noon kick on Fox. Marty, I guess going to the bye week, I guess what are some things you hope to see, and what are some things you hope to see when they take the field again in 2 weeks in Ann Arbor?
I mean, it would be nice to see the running backs not fumbling the ball a bunch and to see the passing game be able to do something. But no, I mean, I am I going to pick them to beat Michigan? Probably not, but that's a game if it was in Happy Valley. I'd probably pick Penn State. I think they're two very evenly matched teams. I think they're very capable of beating Michigan. Yeah, I just, come out, play a clean game, get Sean Clifford to play a good game, continue to do what you've done on defense, and you have an opportunity in that game. But yeah, just clean up today. None of the turnovers. You want to see Sean play better than he has. That's going to be the key. This running game, I feel like, has shown enough to have confidence. They're going to be successful week in and week out. The key is going to be Sean Clifford in this passing game. If they can come out, because that going into that game, Jim Harbaugh and his staff, they're going to try and stop Nick Singleton. They're going to try and stop Kate Renau and Kevon Lee and force Sean Clifford to beat them. So it's going to be up to Sean. We're going to need Sean to come out and probably play the best game he's played all year. And if he can do that, they'll have a legitimate shot at winning that game in Ann Arbor. And if he doesn't, you're probably going to be looking at 5-1. And as unfair as it would be, a lot of people sitting here wondering, is this going to be like last year where you start 5-0 and crumble? I don't think that'll happen. I mean, like I said, I think personally what I think happens is they go there, they lose to Michigan and still wind up probably going 10-2, maybe 9-3 at worst. But I understand why people are going to have their questions. And I'm sure if they do lose next week when the game's over, heat of the moment, I'm going to be ticked off. I'm going to say the same thing because that's just how fandom works.
Precise. Now, I watched a little bit of Michigan today. Their 27-14 win at Iowa. I mean, the game wasn't even as close as that final score made it look. Michigan was pretty much in control that whole game. The closest it really got was when it was 20-7. I guess early mid fourth quarter, but Iowa just didn't. I mean, just weren't a team that's capable of really moving the ball consistently on offense. And Michigan was, they were able to pound it with Blake Corum per usual, and JJ McCarthy at times looked human. Let's say certainly a very capable quarterback, and Penn State will have to be, of course, on their A game. The secondary, the no fly zone will need to be enforced to the max in that game. But it kind of feels like one of those games. You figure maybe Penn State tries to stuff the box to try to contain Corum and force JJ McCarthy to beat them with his arm, beat that secondary, because I feel like that's Penn State's best chance in a game like that.
Yeah, totally agree. JJ McCarthy's got all the arm talent in the world, but the guy just has not impressed me a ton quite yet. Today against Iowa, definitely he missed some throws from. I mean, I was kind of flipping between that and a few other games. But from what I saw, he missed throws that if he hits them, Michigan wins that game probably by 3 or 4 scores. And like you said, the game was not as close to the final score. Michigan's offense in the second half, once they got up 20-0, just went into a shell, and they were playing not to lose because they knew there was no way in the world Iowa's offense was going to generate that much. So yeah, it'll be a good test. I'm with you on how you beat them. You load the box, and I mean Michigan's got some good receivers. Don't get me wrong, Adrilton Anthony, Roman Wilson, Ronnie Bell. There's some guys out there that can make plays. But this Penn State secondary so far has looked like one of the best in the country. I know the coaching staff has that kind of faith in them. You've got to come out and you've got to put Joey Porter Jr. and Kalen King and Johnny Dix, never may be on an island out there, and load the box and just trust your defensive backs to make a play whenever they need to, because that's how you're going to beat this Michigan team. if you don't load the box between Blake Corum and Donovan Edwards, they're going to have success running the ball. I mean, they're going to have success running the ball regardless. Blake Corum and Donovan Edwards is one of the best running back tandems in the country. Michigan's always going to be Michigan. They're always going to have a good offensive line. But I think Penn State's capable of winning that game. They've got the defensive line that can neutralize Michigan's offensive line. They certainly are going to be the best secondary J.J. McCarthy has faced by far, in my opinion. And, McCarthy's a kid who really hasn't faced a lot of adversity yet. And with Cade McNamara banged up, if you can get into McCarthy's head and get him start second-guessing himself and start struggling, you could make it a long afternoon for the kid. So, there's a lot that can happen in the next 2 weeks. Michigan's going to play another game before then yet. But, yeah, it's definitely shaping up to be one of the biggest matchups of the college football season thus far. Probably one of those games. College game day will probably be there. Big noon kickoff's going to be there. So, yeah, it should be a lot of fun. Should be a great atmosphere in Ann Arbor. And what's that?
Big noon's confirmed they'll be there.
Okay, I figure, yeah. And they're going to be there. Game day will most likely be there. And, yeah, and it should ultimately be a start of a stretch of 3 really fun weeks for Penn State. You're going to look at 3 straight games, most likely against ranked teams. Minnesota might not be ranked by them, but I'm assuming there's a good chance they'll win their next 2 games, get back in the top 25. So, yeah, it's the kind of stuff you live for in college football. And, it's like the old adage, if you want to quote Ric Flair, if you want to be the man, you got to beat the man. And Penn State's going to have that chance, and it starts in 2 weeks when they go to Ann Arbor against the defending Big Ten champions.
Yes, indeed. I'm not going to do a woo because I can't do that. But speaking of future Penn State opponents, looking around the Big Ten, Minnesota, as you mentioned earlier, peed down their own leg, lost 20-10 at home to Purdue. It was, to be fair, they were missing Mo Ibrahim. Don't know if it was injured or was sick or just was in the doghouse.
I did see PJ Fleck said at halftime they asked him on the field that he said it was lower leg injury and that he was not going to play. So, but he was dressed, which was weird, which almost leads me to believe something may have potentially happened in pregame warmups. Because if you knew he wasn't going to play, why would he even be in pads?
That's possible. And plus, if it wasn't that bad, you think they would have thrown him in.
Especially with how much your offense was struggling, you think you would have looked to get a spark.
And Tanner Morgan, Wolf, 3 interceptions. It was a rough game for him. Although Aiden O'Connell wasn't really any better. He threw a couple picks himself, but in very un-Purdue-like fashion, their running game was what helped them win this. Maccabee, what is it? David Maccabee. Pull off like a 68-yard run to help us effectively seal the game for a touchdown. So he had 112 yards on the ground. A very un-Purdue-like win, really. For a team that's, expect them to throw it around the yard. They ended up beating Minnesota with the ground game with their defense. So very interesting to see. Ohio State, 49-10 over Rutgers. Although Rutgers was ahead 7-zip in the very early going, thanks to Ohio State muffing a punt inside their own red zone, which set up Rutgers' only touchdown of the game. But they did go on to cruise to a pretty easy win. Mayan Williams had 189 yards and 5 touchdowns on the ground. And it's not like Mayan Williams is some speedster necessarily. He's a big dude who's kind of more like the Thunder to Travion Henderson's Lightning. But it seems like Travion Henderson must have been injured today because I don't see him at all in the stat line for rushing. But he'll be another load for Penn State's defense to worry about down the stretch. We also have Maryland. They took care of business with Michigan State 27-13. We do have a comment related to that, which we'll get to shortly. Illinois, man, Brett Bielema goes into his old stomping grounds in Madison, Wisconsin, and just beats the hell out of the Badgers 34-10. I would imagine the hashtag Fire Paul Christ is trending heavily on Twitter right now. After that, I definitely did not see that one coming, Marty. I don't know about you. At least not a beatdown like that.
Yeah, no, I definitely do not expect Illinois to go in there in the Burt Bowl and just stick it to Wisconsin. Good for them though. Good for Brett Bielema. Good for the Illini. I'm sure. I know we mentioned Ellie Moretta Feliz early in the show, but our fellow Black Shoe Diaries colleague, who is probably the world's biggest Wisconsin hater. So I'm sure he's loving every second of watching the Badgers struggle this year. And speaking of Penn
Also, the world's biggest Northwestern hater.
yeah. But speaking of Penn State opponents, not a future opponent, but past opponent, Auburn out here doing some good work for Penn State for the strength of schedule. They are currently leading LSU 14-0 early on. So
there we
it
go.
wouldn't hurt to see the Tigers get things figured out and find a way to still win 8 or 9 games this year and make that win at Jordan Hare look even more impressive. Even though,
and oddly enough, save Brian Harson's job.
That would be the funniest part if Auburn just plays too well where they can't fire.
They were literally last week. They were literally like the Missouri running back didn't do his best Leon Lett impression, dropping the ball right before, I guess, Deshaun Jackson for you younger folks watching. That's Deshaun Jackson impression, just dropping the ball before it crosses a goal line in celebration. Auburn's probably coaching this game with the interim coach right now.
There's no chance, absolutely no chance Brian Harsin does a job. If that happens, you said we're probably talking about like interim coach Derek Mason right now or something like that, if not for that fumble.
Funny how
Missouri doesn't miss a chip shot field goal in the last play of regulation.
Oh, I guess that too. I mean, and it was point blank up the middle chip shot. This isn't like you're kicking at an angle kind of chip shot, which I can understand if you just push it, you don't get it, like you don't hook it far enough to get it through. But this was straight down the middle, and he somehow hooked it still. So. Yeah, I mean, but again, if it's early, but if Auburn can hold on, I mean, you got to feel pretty good at the moment if you're Brian Harsin. There's still, of course, just a whole October gauntlet ahead with Alabama and Arkansas and Mississippi State. So they'll Texas A&M. So who knows? They can still pile up the losses and get fired anyway come November, but looking good for him right now. So, good on Brian Harsin and good on Auburn. It definitely getting tired of hearing about how Penn State beat a bad team and at Auburn and blah blah blah. And you're going into Auburn's house and waxing them. I mean, has to count for something.
Yeah, the only crappy thing that would come out of that, and this isn't even necessarily crappy, I shouldn't say, it'd be hilarious more, is if Auburn does turn this thing around and wind up winning 8 or 9 games, the Auburn and the SEC faithful will be out in full force. Somehow Penn State got lucky, 41-12, but somehow it'll be they lucked into it. If they played again today, Auburn would win, and it would I'm just gonna sit and laugh. But war damn Eagle the rest of the way, baby. Go win the SEC for all I care.
War damn Eagle, indeed. One more Big Ten score going on. Indiana, Nebraska up 7-0. It's early first quarter. We'll see if that holds for Nebraska. They're actually a slight favorite in that game, so. You have to figure they're going to win at least one game in conference play as bad as they've been. And Indiana, they're 3-1, but it's a very shaky 3-1. So I can't say I'm surprised they're down at the moment.
Yeah, and you look at Indiana, they should not have beaten Illinois. The officials, again, speaking of Penn State and Auburn, the officials granted Indiana an extra down in that game. That proved to be very costly for the Illini. And Indiana also honestly had no business beating Western Kentucky. So that Indiana team should probably have 3 losses, already. But yeah, they're not very good.
No, they're not. So that's it for Marion. We'll take a look. Yeah, I say start a few comments here we can address real quickly. Got a Maryland fan here, Michael. Hey, Penn State, keep looking like that, and Maryland gives his team a beatdown. Well, if they play like that today against Maryland, I certainly think Maryland would have won that game. They've got a more prolific offense in Northwestern, but I'd imagine things will be a little different then. That being said, Maryland, I certainly expect Maryland to put up a dogfight, just like how they put up a dogfight at Michigan. Maryland's good. They're for real. They're that. Indiana used to be the chaos team for so long. Like, I feel Maryland's taken on that chaos team role in the Big Ten East. Could end up springing an upset, perhaps. So definitely going to be a big test for. We obviously talk about this 3-game stretch coming up being Manny's biggest test, but that Maryland game, November 12th, that's going to be another huge test for the no-fly zone. So going to be an interesting matchup for sure.
Yeah,
They got
I will say with Maryland, there probably would be teams on this schedule who are less talented than Maryland that would potentially scare me more simply because what Maryland wants to do is a good matchup for Penn State. We've talked so much about the secondary. We've talked so much about this pass rush. Similar to Purdue. Purdue's a very good football team. I won't be surprised if Purdue wins the Big Ten West still. I think Purdue probably is the best team in the Big Ten West. But that was a good matchup for Penn State, just like Maryland's a good matchup for Penn State, because if you want to beat Maryland, you've got to get after Talia Tagovailoa, and you've got to stop that passing attack, and Penn State's got the tools to do it. But yeah, I agree. It's not going to be an easy game at all. They're a good team. They're a good football team. I think Maryland probably gets at least 8 wins this year, maybe 9. And I wouldn't be stunned to see them get somebody they shouldn't. And maybe that is Penn State. But ultimately, I think the game being Beaver Stadium, I think, is big too. But that combined with what Penn State does so well on defense, is rushing the quarterback and stopping the pass. You're facing a Maryland team that's going to want to throw it 40, 45 times. Probably a good matchup for Penn State.
indeed. And then we got Mike saying, "My God, did Michigan look good? Go blue." Yeah, they look pretty good. They also at times they looked like, I'll say it was good, but I also wasn't thinking to myself, "Oh crap, Penn State's going to get rocked in a couple weeks." And of course, I'm not saying I would still, if I was predicting today, I would still say Michigan in a close one, but I do think that's going to be a pretty evenly matched game. Both teams trade some haymakers in that one. Could come down, to turnovers, field position, which obviously we'll need to get a hell of a lot better from today. But hopefully they won't be playing that game in the remnants of a hurricane. So,
yeah, no, I agree. I think, obviously it's a good win for Michigan. Anytime you go in to Kinnick Stadium and win, that's always going to be a good win, especially the top 5 team, because, as Penn State has seen on more than one occasion and, nearly saw again in 2017, that's where top 5 teams go to die. And to Michigan's credit, they didn't. Even when, late in that game where it was 6 minutes to go, it's 20-7. Iowa's down inside the Michigan 10-yard line. And I don't know about you, I'm watching thinking, man, they're going to score here. They're going to force a 3 and out. And this is going to be potentially be the most Iowa win in the history of Iowa, where you're just sitting back scratching and saying, how in the hell did they win that game? And to Michigan's credit, they didn't let that happen. So yeah, I think that, if you're a Michigan fan, you got to feel good right now, but their season really starts when Penn State comes to town in 2 weeks. No disrespect to Iowa or Maryland, but Penn State will be the first team they have faced this year whose talent level is, not even necessarily equal to theirs. Cause they're probably pretty equal, but first team they face whose talent level is even remotely close to theirs. If you look at Maryland, again, not to shit on Maryland or anything, they have a great offense, but that defense, do you really expect them to stop any sort of offense with a pulse? And Iowa's the complete opposite. As good as their defense is, their offense would probably struggle against some high schools. So, that will be Maryland's Michigan, that'll be Michigan's first big test of the season.
No doubt. David thinks Penn State's showing they can dominate. It should be Michigan. We'll see, David. That would be nice.
I hope you're right, David, but we'll see what happens.
Definitely. I'll have to think long and hard about my prediction when that time comes.
I'm glad we've got 2 weeks.
Yeah, we at least get a little breather here after what's been a very interesting stretch thus far. By interesting, I mean, they squeak out a tough one on the road at Purdue to open the season. And then, the run game experiences a renaissance starting with the Ohio game. They go, just absolutely wax Auburn at their house, come back, play okay game against Central Michigan, then today's clunker. So it's been quite the ride, and I'm sure we're excited to see. We're curious to see how the huge game stretch coming up will go. You would hope they could at least win one of those. That one being the whiteout against Minnesota at home, and if you can get a win either over Michigan on the road or beat Ohio State at home in what's probably going to be a stripe out big noon kick on Fox, maybe the narrative suddenly changes a bit. Like you're thinking, not just like 10-2, maybe you're also thinking like 11-1, Big Ten championship, perhaps.
Yeah, I mean, if any Penn State fan who tells you they wouldn't be happy with going 2-1 in that stretch is nuts. Um, you're going to
I'd be
face.
jumping for joy if two would
Oh,
go.
I'd be going no matter who the loss was against. And honestly, if you go, as crazy as it may sound, if you tell me Penn State goes 2-1 in that stretch, you get to pick who the losses against. It's going to be Minnesota, right? Because you win those other two, you're going to win the Big Ten East. And,
Right.
you might get a crack in Minnesota, get Indianapolis. But yeah, if you go 2-1 in that stretch period, you're ecstatic, especially if you can clip. I mean, James Franklin still has never beaten Michigan and Ohio State in the same season. So you'd love to see that finally happen. But no, I mean, honestly, you go 1-2 in that stretch, you're going to feel good because you go 1-2 there. You're probably looking at 9-3 is the absolute worst case scenario. Indiana and Rutgers stink. I know Michigan State's been Penn State's kryptonite, I swear, since about 2004. But if they can't beat this Michigan State team, I might just go find some traffic and play in it for a little bit or something. But
I would think Maryland would be the biggest threat.
yeah, honestly, outside of those three, Maryland's probably your biggest test. I think they beat Maryland. So I think if you can go 1-2 in that 3-week stretch, you're probably going 10-2. And if Penn State's 10-2, they're the kind of brand that you're going to get a New Year's Six berth. In which, hey, coming off back-to-back years of 11-11, and everyone's circling 2023 as kind of like the quote-unquote year for Penn State. If you get 10-2 in a New Year's Six berth, man, you'd be ecstatic. I mean, 9-3, you should be very happy. But hey, excuse me, anything better than that, you should really be happy.
I'm seeing lots of Orange Bowl projections so far for Penn State. So if they keep winning, that may be where they ultimately end up. One last comment here from Mark. BT My Power Press Offense, mobile QB, scored 27 top 5 defense. What's next? Well, Michigan with the Big Ten, you got to get through Columbus, man. I could certainly see Michigan undefeated going into Columbus. I could see that game being a battle between two undefeated. It's kind of reminds me of 2006 when Ohio State and Michigan both unbeaten as number 1 versus number 2. It was in Columbus, and actually I remember they moved the game from its hallowed noon spot to a 3:30 kick because of the stakes of that game. Like the winner was going to go to the BCS championship game, which ended up being Ohio State. But we could potentially have a showdown of undefeateds there, but we'll see. Like you said, I think Penn State, obviously for both teams, the showdown in Ann Arbor is going to be their biggest test coming up. So I'm so looking forward to it, as are you. Thanks once again, everyone, for tuning in. BlackShadari's.com. Check us out. Marty's going to have his Twitter reactions post later this evening. I'm going to have position grades tomorrow sometime. And as a reminder, year-round, Black Stars is your home for Penn State sports coverage. About another month, actually, basketball practice officially started. So starting next month, basketball tips off. And also wrestling. They'll be going for their 50th national title in a row or something like that. Hockey. I know they've been down a bit lately, but still have a pretty avid following. So we cover hockey as well. So all the winter sports that you love, come and check us out for that too. As for Tim, Marty, thank you again for tuning in, and we will see you in 2 weeks.